Now it is time for the train game of the week. This week's train game is Pandemic Train. Pandemic Train is developed by Trigger Labs, and it easily, like when you first boot it up and when you first start playing, it easily draws comparison to the absolutely phenomenal game This War of Mine. Although I want to make it very clear to everybody, you should not actually compare Pandemic Train to This War of Mine. The comparison is only easy because sort of visually and tone-wise they are very similar, but gameplay-wise they're not trying to be the same thing. Pandemic Train is a lot better compared to The Final Station. It just has more resource management and actual interactions with the train on it, as where the Final Station just had you going from sort of place to place and the train was almost a loading screen. In Pandemic Train, the train is real and the train is important. Pandemic Train is not just about going from place to place, it's going to place with your whole base. It's about exploring a world forever changed by a deadly, unknown event and careful management of your people and resources while you do it. Your goal is to find a cure to the pandemic and save the world. Pandemic Train is filled with larger-than-life situations and characters, making it firmly sort of a, fantasy game. A fantasy resource game set in the interwar period between World War I and World War II, it seems. It's great. It has a lot of what I want from a train game, meaning that you play people who take a train to places and do things, which is everything a train game should be and should have. Trains exist because of people, and therefore train games, I'm kind of looking at you a little bit, Train Simulator, that ignore the people and focus too hard on the train. Forget that, trains are just hundreds of tons of steel and coal and power that are really just liminal spaces. Trains are just very complicated liminal spaces, and I think Pandemic Train gets that. You interact with this liminal space in between missions where you upgrade it and you outfit your crew, but ultimately the train's job is to get you from one destination to the next, and it does so absolutely beautifully in the way that I love things to be done. I am a little worried, honestly. I've only played the first part of the game. I've only played the demo, which goes over the first part of the game, and then I immediately bought it, but that's besides the point. I am a little worried that, come the end of the game, the train's going to get Battlestar Galactica'd, and I will cry if that happens, but so far, I really do like what I see. To set some expectations for people who are watching this that might be interested in the game, number one, it has a demo. I think everything you need to know about the game will be covered in the demo, and I am so glad demos are back. And Trigger Labs, if somebody from your company is watching this, thank you for making a demo. I have played so many good games lately because they had a demo, and I was able to sort of set my expectations to what the game had because the developers let me play the first hour of the game rather than risk buying something that I wouldn't like and then being upset at the experience. I can now avoid something I know I won't like and buy something I know I will like. But as I said, I need to set some expectations. Pandemic Train is a little unpolished. The camera angle is fixed and the game world doesn't always know that there's something between the character and the camera, so you don't really get a really good sort of 3D see-through effect when your character's behind something, and that can be frustrating. And that's one of those sort of quality of life things you expect from a game with a fixed camera that this game just doesn't have. They do a really good job of designing levels around that, but it does sometimes become a problem when you're unable to see terrain that you think you should be able to walk on, but you can't. It's very confusing at times. And I'm saying that just absolutely bluntly and honestly. The gameplay is unpolished. And that's a little okay because it's not trying to be a AAA game. It's trying to be what it is. And what it is a train game about running and gunning. On that note, the running and gunning could have been a little bit polished to make it feel like a true twin stick shooter. That is kind of what the controls are going for, but ultimately they missed the mark by being a little I'm thinking of games like The Ascent or Ruiner. I think they had really good control schemes that would map very well to Pandemic Train, and that maybe should have been the feel that I would have gone for if maybe I was the game manager or production designer. It's time for a spoiler alert. Minor spoilers ahead for the first area of the game, just for you, my sweet friends. Pandemic Train is riddled with furries. You first see this at the boss of the first area. He is awesome, and I'll get to that in a minute. Unfortunately, the story of the game, as far as furries is concerned, takes the stance that they are sort of mutated bad guys who drink an evil elixir. As a dog on the internet, I would rather the game be about the awesome furries in a very contemplative plot that deals with themes of transhumanism in a post-pandemic world as the powers that be use their hoarded resources and wealth to revert the world to a pre-pandemic state that benefits only them. Pause for silence, I guess. Trigger Labs, if you need a writer for Pandemic Train 2, I'm available. Send me a message. All of this, of course, is forgiven. Not having a contemplative plot about transhumanism and how furries are awesome is forgiven because look at this guy. This is the boss of the first area, and he is the most daddy wolf-boar hybrid I have ever seen. Sign me up, please. He is just out there and amazing, and it is kind of great. I don't know what else to say. I could, oddly enough, talk about Pandemic Train. Once again, a game I have only played the demo of before buying immediately and haven't had time to really dive into more because I love it. I love it. I love everything about it. The gameplay is great, but it is time to score Pandemic Train. Reminder, we here in the Weiler Dome use all 10 numbers on the 10-number system. A number 10 is a transcendent experience. 5 is worth your money and the first number at which we put our recommendation seal on. And 1 is damaging to the human soul or society itself. All scores are adjusted and calibrated to my taste and my taste alone. Well, since I have been able to talk about this game so much, after only playing the demo, I have no choice but to give it a 6 out of 10. Meaning that I have not only purchased the game, but I believe my experience in the demo was worth that purchase price alone. So thus far, it is worth my money. I will say the only thing preventing it from being a 7, and thereby landing in the echelons of great games, is it has a fair amount of quality of life issues. As I mentioned, the camera's a little weird, the controls are a little clunky. It could just be polished up, like a big major patch, and boom, this thing gets a 7 immediately, but right now it is a 6 out of 10, firmly there on the scale. It is worth your money, it is worth your time, and it is fun. On the train game scale, which is a completely arbitrary scale about train usage, train development, and train importance, where, I don't know, Train Simulator is like a 3 or something. It's a 7. It's a 7 out of 10. Early game, the train isn't super important. You don't have enough resources to upgrade it, so I don't know how that looks. It could easily hit an 8 out of 10. We'll see. But the point is, the train functions as a train. The game isn't just about the train. The train is doing its job, and it's getting you from adventure to adventure. It is your home. It is your base. It is the place where you heal. But also fundamentally, in the way that trains are, if you need to explore the world, you gotta stop the train. And I'm really happy to have a game with a train in it that acknowledges that fact. In short, I can highly recommend Pandemic Train. It looks interesting to me, and if it looks like the kind of thing you're interested in, grab the demo, because as I mentioned, they made a demo.